Is it true that Caucasians or white Europeans, they share their DNA with dogs or what we might call canines?
Tua, yes, that's the simple answer. But the thing is, when we say Europeans or white people, there's a differentiation. We have to always be very clear that not all white people come from the same lineage or genetics. So if you read like the 33 commandments, right, it tells you that there was a graftation of the Adamites. And even before that, there's what people are calling white people that came from like the Flugorods, okay, which goes back to like 8,400 years ago, the Yakub story. We literally just dropped a video explaining that whole story about how, you know, Yakub grafted the beings that are known as the Flugorods. Now, when you say white people, there is no such thing as white people as there is no such thing as black people, because that was something that was put together, and that kind of ties into the competition and the race wars, right? So when you use words like Caucasian, you're talking about a specific group of beings that came out of the Caucasus Mountains, which will tie into the Flugorods, and then later on, the Canaanites that you read about in the Bible, because Canaan or Canaan was a son of Ham, because it says, "Cursed be Canaan," and he was a Negroid, but he was an albino, right? And from the albino, he got the curse of leprosy. And that's how you get those Canaanites. And there were other children, when you look at the 11 sons of Canaan, they were different, like you got the Arkites, Girgashites, the Amorites, the Jebusites, and so on. These are all part of those children. Then you have what we refer to as the Adamites, which are the graftation by way of the Pleiadians, who came from Pleiades. And what they did was take that which was already here and grafted what you're calling the Adamites today. So when people are reading the Bible and it talks about the first man being Adam, you look at the description, it talks about him being ruddy red, rosy red. This is where you get the word Adam. That word Adam is really in the Hebrew Adamah, which is off the ground, but it's talking about when this graftation was taking place. And then you also have the word Edom that comes from that word, which is red, which deals with the Edomites, but it's also dealing with the word red, because as I said, the Pleiadians that were grafting these beings, they said in the Bible in Genesis, "Let us make man in our image and our likeness." And so they are blonde-haired, blue-eyed beings, the original Nordics, who were that come from that descendancy. So when they were, those beings were in the reason Canaan had to move into the mountains is because as an albino, he lacked melanin. And when you don't have much melanin, the sun is very damaging to you, because you can get leproma, which is the scientific name for it, or in the health world, they will say Hansen's disease. When you look at Hansen's, you're literally hearing the word Ham's sons, and Ham's son was Canaan or Canaan. So he had to move up into the mountains to be in a cooler climate where it's more conducive for his because of his melanin, the lack of his melanin. But because of the curse of leprosy, it means that they will get skin cancer when they're in the sun. So that most European countries are in a cooler climate than away from the equator. So when they were in the caves, this is when, the bestiality was taking place, and with that graftation, you get the genetics of the Homo canine, the Homo porcine, and what's the other one? And the simian. right? This is where people that don't know, when they're trying to find out where we all come from, they will say, oh, we came from monkeys, or we came from this. But that's because when you look at the genetics of them, it's dealing with their genes they're the ones that are referred to as the Neanderthal, and also referred to as the Cro-Magnon. That's that strain. So I'm saying that to say there are lots of different origins of what people are calling white people today. All right, and we have to be very clear on the differences between them. And when I said there's no such thing as a white person, is because when you ask what makes a white person white, this ties into the Hitler trying to graft a supreme being, and he was trying to make these beings in the image and likeness of the gods that appeared to him, who were these Pleiadians. And they were the ones that gave him certain technology, and he went about trying to graft or create the Aryan race, and blonde hair, blue eyes. This is what I'm saying. These were the original Nordics that came out of that graftation. So, but if you know about Hitler, he was from Austria. He had brown hair. He didn't look like what he was calling, a supreme race. And that's because these gods, they gave him a lot of technology, and he was in the Antarctica. He had crafts. That ties into, that whole story. So, yeah, so the Adamites, they were given, in the Bible, they were given 6,000 years to have dominion over the earth and to name everything. And that's what has happened up until the year 2000, when that time has expired. And so those particular Adamites are the ones that are being removed from the planet by way of just natural extinction, because their telomeres were programmed with only, after 6,000 years to fade away. And you can find that at the tips of the chromosomes, all right? So I hope that's answered that question.
Rahubat, Brother Sukenis Kojo, the first caller from London.
Yeah, Rahubat again.
Just wondering if you can expand on your answer. So you mentioned the 33 commandments and the Flugerods
Yes.
in your explanation. But I was just asking if you can expand on the sense of, from me living in the West and visiting Western countries, whether it's America, Canada, New Zealand, Europe, I have noticed how Caucasians do tend to have a high level of affection, desire, and, say, compassion and love towards canines. Could you just explain on the avenue of, in terms of how did it get into their DNA?
I kind of touched on it. It's because they basically were practicing bestiality, and so the DNA is part of them. And they, as I said, when they were grafted, they were actually, those genetics were part of that graftation. The Homo simian, the Homo canine, which is what you're talking about. This is why you hear the phrase, "Dogs is man's best friend," but you have to ask, which man are we talking about? Because when you say mankind, you're literally saying a kind of a man. So that's how it got involved in their DNA. Because even when you look at the story of the Romans, Greeks and Romans, they talk about Romulus and I can't remember the other one, Remus and Romulus. You will see that they tell you about the story of being groomed and as a baby by these wolves, and remember, the dog is a descendant of the wolf, or the jackal, you see. So it is in their DNA. They've actually done DNA tests to see what genetics everyone on the planet has, and they do come up with those DNA, those genes. But the book you really want to read is 18 plus 1, 18 plus 1, 37 genes of the mitochondrial DNA. And you can read that. But this book as well, called The Dog, it's a whole book that goes into what you're asking. And I'm going to read a little excerpt from page 115, where it says, It's basically saying how they were like. If you read even in the Bible, Revelations 14:1, it talks about, you know, yeah, these people, and it goes on to say, what kind of dogs did the sons of Canaan lie with? It said there were members of the original dog family, along with the Tibetan dog, the hyena, the wolf, as I was just saying. The original dog family became carnivorous after the flood. These dogs were similar to the lepers in that they preyed off small animals, and the lepers were to the point of being able to mix with these dogs because they had fallen so low as to eat raw flesh as the dogs did and walked on all fours as they did. The result of this abomination produced such unsightly creatures as vampires and the wolfman, right? Because remember that, as I mentioned before, the leprosy meant that they had sores all over their body, and the dogs used to lick the sores to help them heal. So it goes on to say that which are the missing link in the Euro-American story. In the Euro-American so-called search for the missing link in his ancestry, he did not look any further than his own backyard, the beast friend, the dog. And it shows you the images and pictures and everything, but it goes on to say that the sentimental attachment and the physical attachment that the Euro-American has with animals is a part of his natural heritage. Yeah, to prove to you that the Canaanite knows what he is and who you are, more basically, perhaps I can learn how it is that I can walk upright, speak and speculate about myself. There was a time when my ancestors could do none of these things. They were not men, but ape-like creatures living in the trees. You know, but it goes on into much, much more detail. That's that.
Perfect.
Yeah, so, yeah, but they're different types, and we have to, again, always be clear on that. Yeah, they're different types, and this ties into when the anthropologists are now trying to find, because that missing link that was mentioned in the book is because people are taught in the Bible that we all come from one place, one person, Adam, which we now know is not true, because when you're saying Adam, you're saying Adamites, and there are different Adams in the Bible story because it's dealing with the different genetic experiments that were taking place at different times, and different hybrids come from the different experiments, you see.